Happy New Year, folks, and welcome to another special edition of Cape Ann Today with Erika Brown, the publisher and editor of The Cricket, coming to us from her office in downtown Manchester by the Sea.
That's
Happy
right.
New Year, Erika.
I don't have the fireworks.
That's all I have. That's the best I could do. All right, I was going to hold a sparkler for the whole interview. So,
Anyway, Happy New Year.
yeah, Happy New Year. So we're off to a flying start now. Lots of things going on in Manchester and Essex. First off, a select board meeting.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that this is an example of something that happened just before the break. It was one of those things that snuck in under the wire before the holiday kind of slowdown. And it was the very heated meeting at at the Manchester Select Board late in December. And it was about a dog hearing. It was a public dog hearing, which I did not appreciate, and you might. I didn't appreciate how emotional dog hearings are.
Oh, man, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
I mean, people love their dogs, and dogs are, part of the family now. So it makes sense. So it was a very heated exchange, and it ended up. I'll tell you what ended up happening. Two weimaraner dogs for an owner on Coburn Road, which is near the Dexter's Pond area. It's a very popular walking area for people because Dexter's Pond is sort of a park, and there's a path around it, and there's walking trails around there. So there's a couple, William Burns, which is really Biff Burns. Everyone knows him as Biff Burns, and his wife Tamara. Everyone knows Tamara because she is an art teacher at the school system. They were walking their 11-year-old Labrador, their 11-year chocolate lab named Hallie, on Coburn Road, and they've been doing that for years and years and years. They've lived in town for 30 years, and they've walked that area for a long time. And over the last several years, they've been walking Hallie there. And in September, they said unprovoked, these three Weimaraners, and it was three at the time, came bounding out of their house and came down to the road. And two of them, one of the Weimaraners hung back. Luna hung back and barked and didn't do anything, but the other two attacked Hallie and therefore her owners. And it was a really, it's funny, you hear the back and forth about what happened, but really you just look at what the results were and you could see it was pretty intense. Hallie ended up having to get stitched up. She had two very large areas that had to get stitched and stapled. A lot of them, almost 100 stitches and staples. So, and she was harnessed and leashed, so she couldn't, she was kind of she was bound. Yeah. And then the owners, Tamara Burns, she had stitches on her hand, so they both had to go to the hospital. So this was a real attack. I mean, it wasn't up for debate. And the owner of the dogs, Alex Westerhoff, these are all people who are known in town, by the way. We see each other at the supermarket type of thing. The dogs that got essentially deemed dangerous at the end of the day, they were Lucian and Velasquez. These are great names. They were deemed dangerous, which means they have to be, their microchip, has to be registered with the town. They have to be photographed. There's an electronic fence that, Mr. Westerhoff had installed the weekend before this hearing, but he had promised he would do it in 2020 in relation to another attack where his dogs were on Coburn Road with a different person and his children. And he said, I'll put in an electronic fence. He did not do that until just before the last hearing. But that electronic fence, the dogs need to get training on it. They're not allowed to leave their property really unless they're muzzled and leashed, and they have to be registered and dogged up. But anyway, so there you have it. It was a little bit of, I would call it drama with a small d in terms of sort of town life, but it was pretty intense, and it shows you that why we have dog licenses and why we have registered things. And it also showed you, it's funny, that the couple, Mr. Burns, Biff Burns, when he spoke, he was actually pretty clear and level-headed, and he said, listen, we don't want the dogs put down, of course, he said, but we do want them to not be dangerous. They're dangerous dogs and they need to be contained. So those dogs will be contained, and that's what happened. So there was a little bit of drama before the holiday.
Yeah, that story could have ended differently if the police were involved, because in an attack like that, the animals are put down. So, all right, unbelievable, but very believable. Okay, on to the budget kickoff for 2023.
It's that season because the annual town meetings are happening, in every municipality, and part of that is sort of the budget. The annual budget gets approved at annual town meetings, and for Manchester, that kicked off officially, really this year. The meeting last week for the select board, they really got the feedback on the initial draft of the budget. It's going to be $40 million, give or take. It's sort of rough right now, but it's a strong standing budget. It's going to actually go through the process of getting vetted department by department with the FinCom weekly starting this week. They're going to be meeting with for instance, public safety. Todd Fitzgerald and Jason Cleary will be in to talk about their budgets, and they'll be sort of go through them department by department. Then the DPW will happen. The harbor master will be in, things like that. He's part of public safety, but in any case, it's 40.5 million. About 19.3 of it is going to be for the school system. So that's sort of the rough breakdown. The school budget is going to be a thing in the next. School budget also has come out, and it's up 4.1%. I think it's going to, there's talk about it triggering a Proposition 2.5 override in Essex. That may not be the case in Manchester. This is too early to tell, to be honest with you, but that's what's going to start happening. But Manchester's starting to look at sort of the bigger capital things, the hard things, the things that are easy to sort of kick the can up the road. They say, oh, we need a new DPW facility. We'll do that in 10 years. You know what I mean? They're starting to kind of gel that now, these big, hard things, a senior center, a DPW headquarters, which is, or, fortifying the one that is on Pleasant Street. Things like that are starting to rear their head. And so is, of course, the new Essex Elementary School, which is going to be built, I think, within the next 10 years. We're now within 10 years. So that means they've got to get started on it now. So that's kind of interesting to see Manchester anticipate these kind of bigger things. And of course, that's also starting to happen in Essex too. But that'll come in a little bit because their annual meeting is in May and Manchester's is in April. So that's where we are.
Gotcha. And now, speaking of Essex, now you just attended the most recent planning board meeting.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't normally attend planning board meetings over in Essex. First of all, they're not as much fun as the Manchester planning board.
Cat fight. Yeah.
But Essex, it's interesting, has put itself now in the position where the rubber's now meeting the road with regard to its zoning and its bylaw. I don't know if you remember about it. I think it's a year and a half ago. Yes, a year and a half ago. About a little over a year ago, they decided that they were going to create a downtown district. Essex was one of, I believe I'm right, I'm about right. There were only 7 municipalities left in 350 municipalities, call it. It's about 350 municipalities in the state of Massachusetts. Essex was only one of 7 that didn't have any separate districts. It only, like, the entire town was one big zoning district, right? There was no downtown district. There was no industrial district. There's no, towns have these sort of shapes where you say, we're not going to have a drive-through Chick-fil-A in a cul-de-sac.
Right.
Not in Essex. You could have it.
Yeah.
Not that they would ever do that, but and remember those issues years ago with Essex. Remember that cigarette boat national champion, racing champion, who was also Mark Gallagher. He was also has an automotive dealership and mechanic. He's a mechanic, but he specializes in Saabs, and Saabs aren't made anymore. So he had like 50 junked Saabs in his backyard, and it was causing a problem with his neighbors. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing that Essex, used to be. It was like a live free or die thing. That all started to change a year and a half ago when they created the downtown district, which was really a way of making official mixed use and, sort of registering sort of a business district, and therefore being able to control and manage and encourage it for economic development. So what they also did at the same time is they made a moratorium for, I think it was 2 years, on any changes from residential to commercial. They made it, you couldn't do that anymore. And they did that so that they could do their planning on changing the entire picture, the entire bylaw, the town bylaw of how is the town going to work and how are they going to have their future. That's all starting now. So it was really interesting to go to the planning board meeting because they're starting to lay out what the next year and a half is going to look like for those decisions. They're going to have it's not an open house. I think it's like a public hearing with the Massachusetts Municipal Area Planning Council, MAPC, yes, which is sort of that quasi-public planning consulting group that the state has where you can use grants to get help, professional help. They're going to have an open house and they're going to be, talking about what the road is going to look like for this kind of these changes. And the first time you're going to see these changes are going to be in the articles in the annual town meeting in May. Now, those changes are going to be kind of administrative. They're not going to be like, oh, we're going to change everything. It's almost like they're learning from Manchester. They're not going to bite off more than they can chew. So the first ones you're going to see in May are going to be things that are like, oh, we're going to reorganize the bylaw. We're going to renumber them, but nothing's going to change substantively. And then they might change the definitions of, which is a big part of the bylaw. But it's also not changing anything per se. It's a little more. And then they're going to, at the end of the year to in the fall and into next year, they're going to start to really shape things. So I don't want to alarm anybody, but it is interesting to see that Essex is now going to start to be more proactive about shaping its future as it relates to business and zoning and economic development and housing, affordable housing, things like that. It's interesting. It's a strategic plan.
It is, Erica, because it's a tough place to sort of figure out how they designate downtown, since it's not the most walkable. It's broken up, right? So I saw that they just okayed decorative street lamps to help designate those areas and things of that nature. So yeah, it will be pretty amazing to see how that shapes out. So,
and also the difference between a tourist economy and then an economy that might be a little different, that might kind of have an economic base that might, because healthy is when you have a bunch of different things coming together in a complementary way. If you're too dependent on one thing, it's not so great.
Well, I still depend on you, Erica, every Monday for these interviews. So if you're okay with that, I will see you this time next week.
Bye, Kory.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.